Last week, Joe Mixon, Chris Godwin, Cole Kmet, and Caleb Williams were guys that absolutely won weeks for people in fantasy football. This week, we're going through 6 players that I believe will be winning you your week this week if you end up playing them. And last week was the first time I did this video, and I hit on 5 out of 7 guys that I named. So make sure to go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support if you appreciate this video right here. And we're starting out with Tank Bigsby versus the New England Patriots. This is an overseas matchup here, so obviously you need to make sure that you have your lineup set by Saturday night. So first of all, with Tank Bigsby, we've already seen the breakout party happen for him. Tank Bigsby has already broken out in fantasy football, and the good thing is he's actually just having more holes opened up for him as far as what his playing time is going to look like. Travis Etienne injured his hamstring. He missed the rest of that game last week, and he has now been deemed week to week in fantasy football terms for his injury. So the likelihood that he plays this week versus the New England Patriots overseas is going to be very, very low. Tank Bigsby looks like he's going to be getting the start. And just when you look at Tank Bigsby and what he's done on a per touch basis this year, he's averaging more than 6 yards per carry in 3 out of 4 games where he's had at least 7 total carries. So anytime they get this guy in some sort of a rhythm, they get him more opportunities. He is really efficient in terms of per touch basis here. And when he's had at least 12 carries, those are both games where he's averaged at least 6 yards per carry. So Tank Bigsby has been really efficient whenever he's able to find some sort of rhythm going in this Jacksonville offense here. And in addition to this, the Patriots are 26th in points versus running backs in fantasy football. And in my personal opinion, I think the London matchup really benefits the Jacksonville Jaguars here. The Jags are in total turmoil here, but the Patriots are so bad, and the Jags have been in this place for 2 weeks now. This is their second week in London, so they're just chilling over there. Patriots got to travel all that way, so there's way less pressure on the Jags players than there is on the Patriots players in this particular matchup, because the Jags players have had time to get accumulated to the new environment that they're playing in right now. I think Tank Bigsby is a smash start this week, and that leads me to my favorite play at the wide receiver position this week. Davante Adams goes right back into your lineup, and he's taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. So obviously, we know what just happened on Tuesday. Davante Adams gets traded to the New York Jets, and he is looking like he's going to be making his return as soon as Sunday night. So I don't know what kind of potion they gave him to make that hammy injury go away, but obviously Davante Adams is going to be playing for the Jets in this first game back, and let me tell you why it's going to be an immediate success for fantasy football purposes. So I've discussed Davante Adams being the wide receiver 1 for Aaron Rodgers on my Tuesday night reaction live stream that I did for both those trades for Amari and Davante Adams. I believe that Davante Adams will be the number 1 wide receiver there because he has the chemistry built in with Aaron Rodgers here. And this team is run by Aaron Rodgers. So anything that Rodgers wants, that's what Rodgers is going to get. He wanted Davante Adams because he has the chemistry and he feels comfortable throwing to him. That's what you're going to get on Sunday immediately against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Steelers are 11th versus wide receivers in fantasy, but I actually think this is fool's gold, right? Because if you look at their first 3 opponents, they were playing teams like the Atlanta Falcons, who were just coming into the new season with a totally new offensive system that they had to gel with. That one didn't work out. They played the Chargers, they played the Broncos, and they obviously played the Raiders last week. But if you take those 2 games in between there, the Colts and the Dallas Cowboys, Michael Pittman and Josh Downs versus Pittsburgh combined for 39.5 fantasy points in a full PPR format, and Jalen Tolbert versus Pittsburgh 21.7 points in a full PPR format. So they're actually getting ripped by teams with good quarterbacks that can actually deliver the ball to good wide receivers here. The only other wide receiver that was worth his jock that didn't perform this way was Drake London in week 1. And again, I believe that was because Atlanta was just getting used to the new offense that they had put in place with Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles tear, by the way. So I think that the Steelers defense versus wide receivers, I think it's actually fool's gold. There's an opportunity here. I'm expecting a very explosive start for Davante Adams with his New York Jets team, and I believe that this is the perfect matchup to do it against the defense that I believe is fool's gold against wide receivers here. Now, if we're looking for wide receiver 2 plays, right, and you've got some injuries and maybe a couple bye weeks here that you're dealing with, I think that Darnell Mooney as a wide receiver 2 is an excellent start this week, and he's going to go off. So, like we just talked about with the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, being fool's gold against wide receivers in fantasy, the Seattle Seahawks, who Darnell Mooney's taken on, It's a very, very similar thing. They're ranked number 12 against wide receivers in fantasy football. And in the first 3 weeks, they played Denver, they played New England, they played Miami without Tua. So they played a rookie quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, and they played Skylar Thompson. So those first 3 weeks were a big joke for the Seahawks defense, and they just took advantage of it as they should have. But since week 3, here's what they've been up against. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams in week 4 against the Detroit Lions, they put up a combined 32.8 fantasy points. Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton, the Giants game in week 5, 35.2 combined fantasy points. And Deebo Samuel last week, 19.2 fantasy points, all in half PPR format. So they're getting shredded again by good wide receivers and good quarterbacks here. So what have we seen with the Atlanta Falcons? Well, their offense is starting to really come together. They look particularly great in the passing game, and there's 2 really good options at wide receiver here. So the Seahawks defense is getting sliced by wide receivers lately. Their defense is still injured. Mooney is very explosive play with good target upside here. So I'm taking the Falcons rolling offense. I'm combining that with Mooney's big playability and his potential to get like 10 or 12 targets in the game. And I'm saying that the Falcons are going to throw all over the Seattle Seahawks, and Darnell Mooney is another good play this week in fantasy football. Now, dropping down to our next wide receiver here, this is a great wide receiver 3/flex play, and I believe that Demario Douglas of the New England Patriots, I never thought he'd see the day. I actually have really liked Demario Douglas for a while, but obviously when you have Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, your upside is totally limited. You've been totally capped by your quarterback play here. But he obviously has a big breakout party last week when he had 9 targets, 6 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown. Like, that's what he did last week in fantasy football. It was absolutely fantastic to see Demario Douglas have that big party. And of course, that's all made possible with Drake May at quarterback. This is not happening with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. And the good thing is he's been the wide receiver 1 by far in New England all season. He's got 9 targets in 3 different games for the New England Patriots this year, while Polk, the guy that everybody thought before the season was going to be the wide receiver 1, he's had 7 targets in one game and 6 targets in one game in weeks 4 and 5. So this guy has just not consistently been their number 1 target because he just has been way less effective on all those targets versus what Demario Douglas has done. He's been a lot more efficient with his work. And just based on what Drake May was doing in his first game of action, he was preferring to throw to Demario Douglas. It wasn't particularly close between him and Jalen Polk. So don't worry about Jalen Polk if that's still in the back of your mind because of the pre-draft process and all these people saying Jalen Polk's number 1. It's not the case with Drake May. Versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, this is just simply the best possible matchup for these 2 guys to build chemistry together, and for Drake May to build confidence, trusting his wide receiver 1 in this matchup. The Jags are dead last against wide receivers in fantasy. Their defense is an utter embarrassment. It's atrocious, and it is the perfect game for Demario Douglas and Drake May to really capitalize on some of the momentum that they built last week and come into this week overseas versus Jacksonville and put up a really good fantasy performance here. Now, going to our quarterback start of the week this week, you've got to have some stones to play this guy because I've got Daniel Jones at the quarterback position. I think it's a great play this week. And you know, the funny thing is, it shouldn't take stones to play Daniel Jones here because Daniel Jones, after week 1, you take out that really bad week 1 where he looked atrocious, everybody was really dogging the guy. After week 1, 3 out of 4 games that he's played were above 18 fantasy points in a 4-point passing touchdown format. So Daniel Jones has been far from really bad in fantasy football 3 out of the 4 weeks. Now, obviously, a big factor whether Daniel Jones is able to do this or not is obviously going to be dependent on if Malik Nabers is going to be able to play. He's obviously missed the last 2 games, and that was obviously a big surprise that he ended up missing 2 games with a concussion that he suffered on a Thursday night game. Well, the good news is, in all likelihood, he should be getting Malik Nabers back this week. So he gets his clear number 1 target back. He's got the downfield threat with Malik Nabers, and that opens up a lot for him towards the sticks with Wan'Dale Robinson to allow him to do his magic. And every single week, like, he provides some level of rushing upside as well. Now, Philadelphia is 16th against quarterbacks here, but again, if you look at what their schedule has been, we've got enough information to know if the Eagles' defense is good or not. They're not a very good defense. They had 2 free weeks with Deshaun Watson at quarterback last week, and Derek Carr at quarterback several weeks ago when the wheels fell off for him. So this Eagles defense, again, similar to the Seahawks, similar to the Steelers that we discussed earlier in this video, I think is a little bit of fool's gold versus quarterbacks here. Daniel Jones, I'm actually expecting a really big week from him, and I'm thinking that he could definitely get you like a 20-point, 25-point fantasy week this week. And dropping down to our tight end start of the week, David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns versus the Cincinnati Bengals this week, I think is a really good tight end start this week. So obviously, Amari Cooper was one of the big deals that happened on Tuesday when he got sent over to Buffalo for a draft pick, right? So that obviously eliminates the number one target out of Cleveland, and Deshaun Watson does not have a number one target unless we want to talk about David Njoku here. David Njoku has obviously only played 3 games this year, but last week when he came back, he had 7 targets versus the Philadelphia Eagles here. So he was not irrelevant by any means last week. He looks to be fully healthy once again. And Cincinnati is 24th in fantasy points versus the tight end position here. So they're definitely giving up points, and there's opportunities here for the tight end position, and especially when you add on top of the fact that, of course, this is going to be a more open offense as far as targets go without Amari Cooper there. And the good thing I actually like about David Njoku compared to Amari Cooper is that David Njoku is going to get a lot of work at or near the line of scrimmage. You know, places where Deshaun Watson can actually throw a football at a functional pace here. And Nick Chubb, in my opinion, returning to this offense potentially this week could help open up the offense just a little bit, so defenses have at least a little bit of a threat of stopping the run with Nick Chubb again. I don't know if that's exactly what's going to happen this week, but I do know that David Njoku is going to get peppered with targets, and that's why he's my start of the week this week at the tight end position. So let me know how your lineup is looking so far this week, and if you want to see the top 30 wide receivers in fantasy football this week, click on this video right here.